Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Black, and I'm one of the Rogue Women writers. We're a group of 8 thriller writers whose backgrounds range from intelligence officers to cops to psychotherapists to journalists. To let you know how this is going to go, for you participants in the Zoom room, you'll be in the gallery during the reading. You can introduce yourself in the chat bar. For those of you who will, we hope, be joining us on Facebook Live, please comment if there's anything you'd like to tell the authors, and especially if you have a question you'd like to ask. All the comments will be monitored and relayed to the authors in real time. The authors will be reading only briefly, so we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. All of the books discussed here tonight should be available through your local bookstore. 4 lucky registrants for this event will win a free book from one of these authors, and these winning emails will be announced at the end of the event, and the winners will be responsible for contacting us to get their prize, so stay tuned to the end. As I said, my name is Lisa Black, and I'm the author of 19 novels featuring forensic specialists, which happens to be my day job. I am based here in Florida, working with my local police department, and I'm delighted to be emceeing this event. First, for our first author, multi-award winning Heather Graham needs no introduction. After a stint of several years in dinner theater, backup vocals, and bartending, she stayed home after the birth of her 3rd child and began to write. Since then, she has written over 200 novels and novellas, including suspense, historical romance, vampire fiction, time travel, occult, sci-fi, young adult, and Christmas family fare. She's been published in about 30 languages and has 70 million books in print. And I can testify from personal experience that she throws the most fun writers' conferences of all time.
Thank you.
In her book, in her new book, this state-of-the-art smart home has everything. A next-generation entertainment system, an ultra-modern kitchen where every appliance is online, a personal AI, and a dead owner. FBI agent Jude McKenzie is faced with the daunting task of discovering how the woman was killed by her own home. Enter Special Agent Victoria Tennant, whose familiarity with cybercrime reveals the stark truth. A machine can only do what it's directed to. As the number of grisly accidents begin to rise, the pair must race to uncover the perpetrator, and there's nowhere to hide when danger may be as close as the very phones in their pockets. Now, Heather's favorite drink is, and I forgot to write it down, and I didn't have one, so I forgot what your favorite drink was. No, wait, I did. My brain. Unsweet tea. Oh. And I think paired with peanuts. So I'm pretty prepared here. But I'm guessing readers will want to know, do you have a smart home? Is any of this based on real experience?
I do. I mean, I think all phones now are smart. I'm not sure. They're supposed to be. Some are smarter than others. But do I have a lot of... No, my idea came for this book when I visited a friend. This was a year ago. Visited a friend at Christmas, and the Christmas lights went on, and she just talks to it, and all these things happen.
Oh.
I'm not sure I want my house doing quite so much, and that's kind of what got me going on this.
Very cool. Well, we will hear more about that later. Our second author tonight is Adam Plantinga. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
It's Plantinga, but
Plantinga.
It's hard to pronounce, and I'm not even sure I always say it right.
Okay. He has been in law enforcement for 23 years, 7 with the Milwaukee PD and 16 with the San Francisco PD. He is currently a sergeant with the San Francisco Police Department. He lives in the Bay Area with his wife and daughters. He has written 2 nonfiction books about urban law enforcement, and his debut novel, The Ascent, came out in January of 2024, which I will say I loved. So I will be going a little fangirl on that later. But in his new book, the sequel, ex-Detroit cop Kurt Argento is ready for some quiet. Still working through his grief over the passing of his wife, Argento finds himself house-sitting for a friend. Then Kristen Reed shows up, begging Argento to find her missing husband and son. But Fenton, Arizona is more than meets the eye. The large, overly equipped public safety team, the unusual financial boosting of failing small businesses by the US government, and a man with no name with unprecedented control over the town. Fenton, Arizona is going to push him further than he's ever had to go, and along the way, he may just lose a part of himself, because justice isn't as black and white as Argento would like to believe. Kurt's favorite drink is Lowenbrau, and we have like 10 different kinds of beer in the refrigerator in my garage, but Lowenbrau is not one of them. And in Hard Town, he gets to pair it with apple fritters. Unfortunately, I didn't have any of those either, but they sound delicious. So you still have the day job in a busy area like San Francisco. You have a spouse, you have kids. Where do you find time to write?
Well, first of all, I think Lowenbrau might be sort of hard to get commercially these days. So I hope you didn't go to any undue effort. Um, so I think, like a lot of folks, I just kind of find little blocks to write when I can. I mean, I take my laptop everywhere. So if I'm waiting to pick up my daughters from soccer lacrosse practice, I'm banging out a chapter here and there. I don't really have a set pattern. It's just kind of whenever I can. So my wife is an angel. She tries to unblock time for me to write and just go to work.
Cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I actually wrote a scene sitting on an overturned 5-gallon bucket in a little manager's office at a physician's office, waiting for the manager to come with the password to download the surveillance video from a robbery we'd had at a 7-Eleven up the street, and they wanted to see if they could get the cars running by. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, you're in the mix.
Yeah, it's like you just got to grab whatever you can. Okay, our third author tonight is D.M. Rowell. D.M. Rowell, Donna, comes from a long line of elders, historians, and storytellers of the Kiowa tribe. During her 30-year career as a marketing media content strategist for Fortune 1000 clients and innovative startups in Silicon Valley, she often escaped to produce independent documentaries. From there, she began a new chapter as a novelist, and the first in her Mud Saw Pole series was the Mary Higgins Clark Award-nominated Never Name the Dead. While back in her new book, while back on tribal land, Mud Saw Pole uncovers an illegal fracking operation underway that threatens the Kiowa's ancestral homeland. But there's an even greater threat. A local businessman involved in artifact thefts is murdered, and a respected tribe elder faces accusation of the crime. After being roped in by her cousin, Denny, they begin to investigate the death while also pursuing evidence to permanently stop frackers from destroying Kiowa land, water, and livelihoods. Mud and Denny race against the clock to uncover the real killer and must face the knowledge that there may be a traitor and a murderer in their midst. It's too late for one victim, and Mud may be next. Now, Mud's favorite drink is a cup of hot, dark chocolate, even on a warm day. And her favorite snack, we were discussing this earlier, is popcorn.
Yes.
Not microwave popcorn, the kind you have to actually put in a pan and, cook on the stove. So, your character Mud has a really big family. So I was curious about why is she particularly close to Denny? How did they become partners in crime? That it's always Denny she winds up investigating with.
Yeah, I think as in a lot of families, you end up getting close to ones that are close in your age, and Denny the closest to her age, and also she had older sisters, other cousins, but Denny was more adventurous, and I think that appealed to Mud's spirit. Being 2 years younger than Denny, she got to tag along, and that was bonded them for life.
Well, I understand.
And I do have to say it's Kiowa. You're pronouncing Kiowa exactly how John Wayne has told the world it should be called. That's exactly what he says in all his westerns. Those darn Kiowas. But yeah, think about Iowa with a K in front.
Yeah, just as I was saying it, I thought, I didn't look up how to pronounce this. I hope I'm pronouncing it
And I usually prep, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Yes. Okay. And our fourth author this evening is Matt Goldman, who is a New York Times bestselling author and an Emmy Award-winning television writer, nominated for the Seamus Award and the Nero Award. Matt's television writing credits include Seinfeld, Ellen, The New Adventures of Old Christine, and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. He lives in Minneapolis with his wife, 2 dogs, and 2 cats. In his new book, The Murder Show, showrunner Ethan Harris had a hit with The Murder Show, a crime drama featuring a PI who solves cases the police can't. But after the 4th season is canceled, he returns home to Minnesota looking for inspiration, where his former classmate, Rowell is now a local police officer. And she's uncovered new information about the hit and run that killed their mutual friend, Ricky, this summer after high school. She thinks if Ethan portrays a killing on The Murder Show, the publicity may bring Ricky's killer to justice. But it doesn't take long for them to realize they've dug up more than they bargained for. Matt's favorite drink is a rye Manhattan paired with cashews. And we are out of cashews, which my husband has reminded me 3 times since yesterday that they need to go on the grocery list. So before we get to The Murder Show later, in your Nils Shapiro PI character, was that inspired at all by Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, which of course is the show made from the Douglas Adams books?
Not at all. First of all, I wrote it before I worked on the Dirk Gently show.
Oh.
Noel Shapiro is a regular detective. Dirk Gently, that's a Douglas
Yeah, you
Adams
can't
book.
say that about him.
So he's a holistic detective, which a normal detective goes to a crime and then looks for clues. A holistic detective, weird things start happening in their life, which are clues, and then they have to figure out what the crime is or was. So they have nothing to do with each other.
That makes sense. Okay, now we're going to circle back around and hear actual parts of our author's new books, starting with Heather. And then I'm going to have some questions for you all. And then at the end, we'll come back and do round robin questions with everybody and take questions from the audience. But now let's hear from Heather. You're on mute.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to apologize. I don't know what happened to my ARCs. They were sent, but they actually never made it to my house. So I'm reading it off my phone, which is very tiny. So forgive me. Prologue. Barton Clay was an idiot, and it wasn't going to work. Worse, he risked them all spending their lives in jail. Yes, they had clients who were brilliant at manipulating AI. They were amazing at artificial intelligence, but the plan that Barton wanted, crazy. It was really his need to impress and obey Celia Smith, and Celia was always trying to prove how important she was to Nathaniel Wharton. And so the game went on, but no matter. Barton had thought his and his wife's friendship with Celia meant he could talk to her, and no, no, no. She was angered by the whole ridiculous thing, and she slammed the door after entering her house. Oh, right, slammed the door. That would really help. Take it out on the house. She smiled briefly. Time to chill, to relax. Not only could her house's artificial intelligence system open and close doors for her, turn lights on and off, control the TV, even run the faucets, the house could even act like a real friend. It could give her answers about movies, about the weather, the state of the world, and more, so much more. She'd given her personal AI system one of her favorite names and even chosen the voice. Chrissy, she commanded the house's AI. Turn the lights on. Oh, and go ahead and get the TV going to any news channel. Lights came on, the television sprang to life, presenting the weather. Lights, TV. Welcome home, Marcy, Chrissy said. Thanks. Of course, AI didn't really care if it was thanked or not, but what the heck? She should stay in practice for dealing with the human world. Yes, she loved Chrissy. She hated Barton Clay. Shaking her head, Marcy headed on into the kitchen. She was hungry. She looked around at the oven, the range, the toaster, mixer, coffee pot, cutting board, electric knife. Ah, well, they were all things she could find in the refrigerator, but first her eyes went to the bar set up on the marble-topped divider between the kitchen and the dining room. After that day, she'd have a drink. She poured herself a large whiskey, swallowed it in a single gulp, and went for another. Then she was ready for the rest of the kitchen. She was hungry, very hungry, and at the rate she was drinking, food would be necessary. So, open fridge. Obediently, the refrigerator door slowly swung open. She began to look at the contents. The salad would be good, but not filling. Let's see. She was vaguely aware of the weather, making way for the news. Wall Street was at it again. Well, of course, the world was a place that could be so easily manipulated. Setting her drink down, she reached for the lettuce and the toaster and the pastries. Walking past the sink, she set the food down on the large cutting board. Chrissy, start the toaster, please. Not too well done. She frowned. That was all she said. But the electric knife had suddenly started whirring. Hey, Chrissy, hey, what's going on? I said toaster, not knife. But Chrissy wasn't listening. The knife came flying at her, and as she tried to grab it, the toaster began to sizzle and burn with such a vengeance that it was jiggling on the counter. And from the nearby sink, the water suddenly began to spray wildly from the kitchen spigot. Chrissy, what the heck? Stop! Shut it all off, she screamed. But it would be her last command. As the knife ripped from her hand and the watery edges slammed against her chest and rose to her throat, the water spray reached the outlet and a sizzle of electricity went surging through her body, along with the erratic cutting of the knife. She was going to sleep all right, close her eyes. But she knew, even as the world turned to true darkness, that she hadn't truly been killed by the evils of artificial intelligence gone awry. For artificial intelligence to exist, there had to be a human mind behind it, a human mind filled with that evil that could fester, grow, and within the new world of AI explode into bloodshed and murder and so much more. The darkness came, and her thoughts about the day were finally and absolutely set to rest, with her one last being that, yes, the house was just like a friend. Chrissy could and would do just about anything, including kill.
Oh,
Obviously, that
that's
character doesn't go on through the rest of the book.
yeah, yeah, no, no, their role has been cut short. That one might say, yes. That was really cool. So, how much research did you have to do for this book, and how did you do it?
Well, I think a lot of us get into the thing where you kind of go down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
where you're watching documentary after documentary. And
Hmm.
then this is a little bit scary. I found out that a couple of things that I wrote have happened. Especially there's an ad out there, y'all might have seen it somewhere along the line, but it's about, oh my goodness, I parked for the game. I can't find my car anywhere, but oh, I have my phone. My phone will call my car, and your phone can actually turn the car on.
Hmm.
And if you can
Hmm.
hack into a phone, then you can hack into the car. So it's they've actually had people killed that way, like in real life. So anyway, I fell down the rabbit hole of documentaries. And spent a great deal of time. And the worst I think that I did was I had to go to the Edgars last year, and they're in the Marriott on New York Square, Times Square in New York.
Hmm.
And the elevators are just massive, and they go up a million floors, and they're all glass. I had just turned the book in, and every time I got in the elevator, I'm like holding on to things since it hasn't happened yet, but you'll see an elevator go down.
Yeah.
Something. Which, of course, they could do it before artificial intelligence, but they can do it really well with AI.
And then those destination dispatch elevators that my husband's an elevator engineer. So you discovered too late that you have to pick your floor and before you go into the elevator in the
Oh, at the
hallway,
mirror,
there's
yeah.
those panels,
Mhm.
and yeah, and you have to pick
Yeah,
it, and then it'll tell you what elevator to get in. And
yeah.
of course, when you get there and you just check in and you don't know this, like me, you just see an open elevator and you're like, oh yeah, I grabbed that, and then you get in there and there's nothing you can do. There's no
Nope.
controls inside the elevator.
And
It's
you
like
see
some
everybody get into those, even if they have picked their floor, because we do it naturally. You get into an elevator and you're like,
You turn around and you look for the
Yeah.
panel. Yeah.
yeah, they don't exist. They're not my favorites.
No. So, did you debate having your smart home? Did you debate this having the solution to be that the home was possessed by a ghost, or to cross genres because you write so many
Well,
paranormal themes?
I do write. It was when I was listening here before to Matt, because I've been doing something called the Crew of Hunters for years. I think there's 47 of them out, and this isn't
Wow.
one of them. But to be in the Crew of Hunters, you must be one of the people, 0.01% of the population who can actually speak to the dead who choose to speak to you. So I do that series, but they also have a separate standalone thriller. So this does not have any ghosts. The
No
AI is the
ghost.
only thing haunting them.
Yeah. Okay. And along that line, you write so many series, but you write so many standalone books. It's like, what makes you decide what your next book is going to be?
Probably life in general. I, like you, live in South Florida, and I think one of the first things is when I was a little kid, I remember them finding a ton of bodies in barrels in the Everglades. Um,
Yeah.
in fact, the radio things do a joke called Florida Man every day.
Yes.
We have very weird things happen in our state, so that's easy enough. And then I'm actually a huge history buff. My mom came over from Dublin, Ireland, my dad, Stirling, Scotland. And actually, you cracked me up about the beer because my dad's family came to Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, because he managed a log mining camp. And the one thing I learned about Wisconsin,
Mhm.
tons and tons of beer and cheese. Just you can get it. Both of them, a lot of them very, very nice. But just I think history gets me. And then as we were growing up, we did, you did car travels when I was a kid
Mhm.
and saw a lot of our country. So the first thing I had was in fact, I got in trouble at school one time because I insisted to the teacher that honor was spelled Honour.
You are.
And
Yes.
I could show her it was in my book.
Yeah.
And yeah, they tried to explain that to me, that we had different spellings, but history, weird things you read about weird places. I
Mhm.
do go, well, we have friends, Terry Rogers and others who, are very into the ghost things. So
Mhm.
you get a lot, when you're looking for ghosts, you get a lot of very unusual, fun history.
Very cool. And you have 5 children,
I
most of
do
whom
have five
most of
children.
whom I've met, and I know they include musicians and actors.
They
Are
have been,
any of
yeah.
them writing?
The oldest is writing, and I think he's going to write children's. And it's funny when you talk about kids too, because they like to tell me that my life did turn into a Dr. Seuss novel, as you were talking about taking the computer with you. I can write in a car, going far, in a plane, and on a train, And then they also like to tease, because I suckered you into this one, they like to tease that I became a writer so that I could write my own plays and cast myself. So, and we will be doing dinner theater at BoucherCon this year with
Oh
Lisa.
yeah. Okay. Well, that's the book sounds fabulous. Can't wait to read it.
One can only
And
hope.
now we're going to go on to Adam and hear a little bit about Hard Town.
That was one scary house, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh, he drove the short distance to Gain Street. It was 2 in the morning, up with the bartenders, the convenience store clerks, and the paramedics. If his plan worked, 2215 Gaines would need a few of those medics. He made a pass by the front of the house. All looked quiet. He parked the Harley a half block down in an alley and walked to the back. Argento figured that a mid-level dealer could have anywhere between 5 and 50,000 in cash on site, along with whatever dope was in reserve. It'd be tucked away somewhere, in toolboxes or an air compressor tank, the bottom of a box of laundry detergent, or behind a heating grate. Argento had seen all these hiding places while executing search warrants. The house would be fortified, front and back, to give the occupants time to arm themselves against intruders and or flush the dope if the police came calling. Maybe a backyard pit bull, sometimes with its vocal cords cut, so it could launch a surprise attack on any interlopers. Or lines of low-hanging fish hooks to scalp cops. There'd be at least 2 guys with guns inside, maybe more. That's how they got down to Detroit, where Argento was from. He didn't think Phoenix would be much different. The back gate to the yard was locked, but it rose only 7 feet, making it easy enough to scale. Argento hoisted himself up and peered over the fence. The yard looked like a rummage sale gone to seed. Odds and ends ranging from rusting camping gear to car parts were all laid out in a bed of trash. A sagging wooden picnic table took up the yard's middle, covered by clothing laid out to dry. No movement. He climbed the fence and swung himself over to the other side. It wasn't a pit bull in the backyard. It was a Rottweiler, a brawny one missing half an ear, the kind of dog they called ghetto elk in Detroit. The Rott emerged from a dark corner and surged toward Argento, but he already had the taser out in his left hand and fired, burying the 2 prongs in the dog's skin. He held the trigger to deliver the shock, and the Rott seized up. He hated doing it because he loved dogs, and this one was just doing its job. But while the taser smarted like a son of a gun, it did no lasting damage. He kept the current flowing as he scanned the backyard. He had 30 seconds until the shock ended. It took him 15 to find the leash. One end was staked to the ground. Argento looped the other end around the picnic table to cut it down to a third of its length. He hooked it on the Rott's collar and let go of the taser's trigger, moving quickly away. Once the voltage stopped, the Rottweiler popped back up like nothing had happened and lunged at him, but the chain held. "I'm sorry, pal," Argento whispered. The Rottweiler wasn't done yet. He barked continuously, straining at the leash. Argento took up a position just behind the porch under a tarp, waited for the back door to open. The sentry in this case was a man in his underwear, his gut hanging over the front band, and a tattoo of the Virgin Mary covering his back. He held a sawed-off shotgun loose in one hand. He had no phone, no keys. Shitty watchman. "Que pasa, Rufus?" he said in a sleep-slurred voice. Then he saw the new configuration of the leash around the picnic table and wheeled, but it was too late. Argento violently jerked one of the man's legs skyward from the bottom of the porch, causing him to flip up and fall heavily on his back. He lost his grip on the shotgun. Argento took it from him and vaulted onto the porch. He kicked shotgun down the remaining few steps, went through the unlocked back door, and secured it behind him. He found himself in the kitchen. The interior smelled like body odor, tinged with the charred rubber chemical smell associated with crack cocaine. He unloaded the shotgun, pocketed the shells, and set the weapon down behind the refrigerator. He had no interest in relying on a firearm he hadn't personally inspected. He stayed where he was, listened. He wasn't going anywhere, not yet. He was banking that the remaining occupants would come to him, because outside, Rufus was only barking louder. Footsteps upstairs, cursing. Then the creak of someone descending the stairs. Argento flattened himself against the wall. He'd see them before they saw him. The men that entered the kitchen had more clothes on than the first guy. They wore a pair of boxer shorts and a sleeveless tee. He approached the rear door cautiously, saw it was locked. He undid the bolts, opened the door a crack. "Pablo," the man called out. Argento checked the second man's hands. In his right, a .38, but no visible phone, no keys, and his boxers didn't have pockets in to store them. Send one watchman out to check on a noise. He doesn't return. Send another after him the same way with no plan. Just bad ideas compounded over time.
Oh, you can't end there.
I didn't want to go over time.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was was very, very interesting. I loved all the little, details of what he's thinking about as he's doing everything, and how logically everything is approached. So have you ever encountered an area or a neighborhood like Fenton where some bad force is controlling everyone? Like,
So that is something I took a lot of creative license with, but this the dope house I just described is in actually in Phoenix, and I've been in a fair number of those. I kind of know the ins and outs, and a lot of things I described are things that
oh
we
yeah,
credentials.
that I could tell, yeah.
So it's just kind of a nice shortcut. I mean, I don't always have to work my brain so hard. I just see something and I just drop it right down in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, that you can tell is all from like personal experience. Um, but this book is a little different from The Ascent, which was basically a nonstop thriller. For those of you listening who haven't read The Ascent, it's about people trapped in a prison with like the worst of the worst, and every level of the prison as you go up, they have to get to the roof to get out, and every level has the worst, even worse prisoners than the ones before. And so it's really like a nonstop thriller, but this seems to be a little more of a mystery crime drama. It's
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, so the most of the ascent takes place indoors, and with this with Hardtown, I thought, hey, let's go outside. So it's more of a sort of a slow boil, and there's a central mystery at its core, which is what is this very bad man doing in the middle of this small town? That's kind of the secret that Argento has to unfurl, and he's not a natural investigator, so he sort of puts his head down and kind of just bowls his way through.
so how do your coworkers react to your new fame?
You know, they like to rib me, which is sort of the cop way. You know, the picture on my book is, I mean, it's a little bit of a sort of a tough guy pose, and they like to give me the pokes about that. Say it looks like I might have a little bowel trouble. Uh, but they've been they've been really good. Some of them, you know, buy the books and ask me to sign them, and I mean, there's characters in the books that I actually name after some of my coworkers, so they seem to get a kick out of that. So it's been good.
I've done that too. That they don't seem to. Well, uh, I've used a lot of cops' names and wind up in my books because I'll be writing and I'll need a name and I'll look up and the extension list. It's right there on the bulletin board, and it's like, oh, that one, okay.
Yeah.
But it didn't seem to impress. I mean, I told one cop because we were kind of friendly, and I gave him a copy of the book even, and because I named it like a bad senator that gets killed on the very first page after him, and so as an apology, I gave him I gave him this book, but I don't think everybody at works every once in a while will ask me how the books are doing, but no one ever says they actually read one. So, if they're asking for autographs, you're doing a lot better than I
I don't know. I think if I may engage in a generalization, I don't think cops read as much as we should. We need to get
am. That, could be. But I said I was all fangirl on The Ascent, and I could talk about that all night, but I won't, except that you said you enjoyed designing the prison in that book. And I actually also designed a prison, had one book that revolved around a prison being constructed, and I designed a facility for violent juvenile treatment in facility in another. Are you involved in any prison reform efforts? Or are you involved in any movements like that?
You know, I not prison reform, but I did take a tour of San Quentin to help me write The Ascent, and I was really struck by a lot of the folks in there that seemed generally remorseful for the crimes they committed,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and people that name their victims every morning
Oh,
and
wow.
are trying to sort of rebuild their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for the work they do, and I think, for instance, prison ministry is something that can really help with healing. So I applaud those efforts.
Yeah, yeah, true, true. Um, do you come from a family of police officers? How did you become is anyone else in your family in law enforcement, and is anyone else in your family in writing?
Uh, no, not in law enforcement. I'm the only cop. It's not even close. It's a bunch of college professors and teachers and theologians and lawyers. But there's a lot of writers.
Oh,
My dad's a published author, uncles, cousins. I'm probably like the 11th best writer in my own extended family. So
wow.
they've shown the way.
That's unexpected. That's very
Yeah.
cool. Okay, well, we're going to move on to Donna and hear part of her new book, and
Right.
then we'll be back to all of you. So tell us about Mud Sawpole.
Prologue. Time. All I need is a little more time, thought the soon-to-be dead man. Hearing the crowd's roar, Gerald Bean looked back at Red Buffalo Hall. The gym-style building was alight as the Kiowa people inside were learning of his treachery, ending murder. He ducked into the shadows cast by the overhanging eaves on the Kiowa Nation complex, the largest of several buildings spread across the Kiowa Nation compound. The wall felt rough through his sweat-soaked shirt. Though cooler than the day, the Oklahoma summer night was still sticky and humid. Damn Indians. Gerald spoke aloud, then peered about in fear of having been heard. He couldn't be found. Not now. Mud Sapo was probably revealing my crimes. Nothing that would stick, but it was a bad time to be exposed. Staying in the shadows, Gerald put distance between himself and the tribe gathering taking place in Red Buffalo Hall. He moved across the gravel roadway toward a large 1940s-era Quonset hut. Gerald watched the door of the small maintenance office attached to one side, waiting to see if anyone remained inside. He was early for a meetup, just how he liked it. There was power in watching each partner slink in. The plan was supposed to be quick and easy, and it was, until Mud showed up. Gerald hacked and spat on the ground, immediately regretting it. Across the roadway, two uniformed tribal police officers paused on their way toward the maintenance hut. "Did you hear that, Joey?" A football player-sized man asked a slightly smaller version of himself. Joey stopped and peered around. Hear what? Taking advantage of the noise made by the police, Gerald slipped deeper into the shadows, keeping the closed office door in sight. There were no lights on within, no sign of his partners. Gerald glanced back toward Red Buffalo Hall. He could hear a faint cheer. The officers argued as they walked on behind the large maintenance hut to the duty vehicles parked in back. Gerald listened until the gravel-crunching footsteps faded away. Once the officers were gone, he moved toward the office. His partners weren't going to be happy to learn the plan had to wait, but there was no choice. Sparsely spread gravel barely covered the wet dirt. Clumps of mud left from an earlier thunderstorm clung to his boots. He dragged his booted feet through the gravel, rubbing the dirt off. He couldn't help but wish he could rid himself of that sawpole girl as easily. Mud has to go, on her own or with a bit of persuasion. An ugly smile formed on his pale face as a possibility came to mind. Making sure no one was in sight, Gerald moved quickly to the office door. He entered the small office thinking, the plan will work. They just have to give it more time. Desks lined one side of the added-on office space. On the other, a well-worn plank floor hallway led to the cavernous maintenance hut. He slid into a nearby desk chair, rolled it to face the office door, now slightly ajar. Gerald heard cars in the distance. The tribal meeting must have ended. Those Indians will be talking about the murder. He rubbed his chin. Today's murder could be good cover. They'll all focus on that and forget about me. He straightened, pulled his shoulders back before finishing the thought. The partners will just have to wait. I'll tell them we're laying low. It will take a bit more time before we cash in. He licked his lips, thinking of the payoff. His thoughts returned to the murder earlier in the day, solved by that meddling mud and her cousin Denny Sopple. A silly emotional murder that served no purpose. Nothing he would get mixed up in. Gerald's annoyance shifted to his partners. They really weren't needed anymore. Their disappearance would solve lots of problems, and his mind went to the money to be had. Gerald thought a little longer about death. Murder done logically had certain advantages, like keeping all the money and no one left to talk. His twisted smile returned. After all, silent are the dead.
Very cool. That all
Thank you.
set up very ominous events during the course of this book. Because so the plot behind the plot there is about fracking, and I read that fracking has caused Oklahoma to surpass California as the earthquake capital of the world.
Yeah, amazing how many earthquakes are happening. I think that I read one at one point that they were having an earthquake every day.
Ugh. And are these like just small tremors that people barely notice, or
For the
but
most
it's
part, they're small tremors, but I think it was last year they had a really good shake, like I think it was a 4 or a 5. So they're beginning to intensify. And unfortunately, they're still fracking away.
yeah, that always sounded like a bad idea to me. It's like
Yeah,
disturbing because here in Florida we have sinkholes where your entire house disappears and people die. I
yeah,
mean, you wouldn't think just like collapsing the ground, you kind of picture like, oh, your foundation would break, but you'd otherwise be pretty much okay. No, the entire thing just disappears,
yeah,
and people that happen to be in there are killed, and it terrifies me. It
yeah.
just seems so awful. I was reading about this 4-day introspection
Yeah,
that,
what I'm doing with my Mud Saw series is they're called brisk mysteries. So each book takes place in less than 24 hours. And I'm doing the first 4 books as successive days so that it
oh,
emulates a 4-day quest. I'm trying to, I bring in, it seems strange, but I'm bringing in Kiowa spirituality with murder. And it's working. I like it. So what I'm having done is each day, when we have a quest, it typically is a 4-day quest, and it's introspection. You spend time being introspective. I have Mud Sapo, who has been very successful. She left the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation, went to college in the Silicon Valley, and is done successfully there, but has reached a point where is money and success here, happiness and
mm,
true success. And she's called back to Oklahoma by her grandfather, who then disappears. And that kicks off book 1. And
mhm,
during book 1, she's trying to solve, her grandfather disappears, there's a murder. And in that process of 18 hours, she solves the murder and also discovers that she's on a untraditional vision quest. And she gets her totem, a spirit animal comes to her, which will be carried through the next 3 books. And in book 2, Silent Are the Dead, it's the second day. It picks up about 15 minutes after the first book, though I have to say each one is planned as a standalone. So if you pick it up at any point, it's a
mhm,
complete mystery. It's nice and you can see her progression through the 4. But
mhm.
I didn't want it to be you have to read 1 and then 2 and 3 and
Yeah,
4.
yeah.
So book 2, she again is whereas book 1 focused on time and learnings from her grandfather, her Kiowa elder grandfather. She has a great aunt, Cora, and she does a sweat in the midst of this 18-hour through the night trying to solve another murder. And it's through the sweat that she starts introspection, starts discovering herself, and also recognizes a clue that she had missed earlier to solve the mystery. Yeah. And then book 3, she gets time to take a 4-hour flight to Silicon Valley because she has to merge her two worlds to find that balance. So the book 3 takes place in Silicon Valley, and then I'll have her finish up in book 4 back in Oklahoma again.
Wow. That's an ambitious little project there. Trying to fit 4 books in 4 days.
Yeah. If I had known how difficult it was going to be, I wouldn't have taken it on.
I know what
But
you
I
mean.
had no idea what I'm doing. I'm not near as experienced as you all are, and I am in such awe of all of you on this panel, the books you've written, and just hearing you discuss them. Oh my gosh, I'm in awe. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Oh no, thank you for coming in, so to speak, virtually. So you have this whole background in marketing. How does for us authors who are working on trying to get sell more books, how does that help in promoting your books? What are you taking from the business world that we could all imitate of you and using it to promote your books?
I am the world's worst marketer for myself. It's astounding to me. I can do it for anybody and everybody, from the social media, getting, the dailies, the blogs. But for myself, I find I don't market. I just, I started writing and once I stopped working. And so and I have found that I am not the marketer I should be for myself. I'm a disappointment. Sorry.
Well, maybe you need to pretend it's not you. Like, pretend you're a client that you need to work for.
That's the only way I finally get my bios done is finally not thinking it's me. But it's also when, as you know, as an author, you have to wear all these different hats. So if I'm being the marketing Donna, I'm not being the writing my story Donna, or these other promotion pieces, because as you know, you need to be writing little articles, you need to be, you need to be talked about and driving people to talk about you. And I find that I'm at a point in my life, I want to write. And that's kind of what I'm indulging myself with. I'm trying to I'm just about done with my 4th book, and for me, it's like a book a year. So I'm hoping to get this one done and then get book 3 out next. Gosh, they've been doing every November. I don't think we'll hit this November, but the next following November, and then have book 4 follow immediately after. And then kick off into something else.
You really hit the ground running when you decided to do this writing thing.
Got to do a brisk mystery. You got to move.
True. Okay, let's hear from our last author, last but not least, Matt, who is truly amazing to all of us because he's not only written books, but TV and movies. So tell us about it. Let's hear from The Murder Show.
Okay. This is it. I have it because it comes out tomorrow.
Yay!
Unless you're in Scottsdale tonight, you can get it one night early. Chapter 1. 22 years after Ethan Harris heard Ricky O'Shea's blood, yes, heard Ricky's blood as it dripped from his body and splattered on the soft ground below, Ethan wheels his carry-on bag into his childhood home. He drops his luggage in the entryway, walks through the small living room, and continues into the kitchen where he sees a note on the countertop. Welcome, at the Shapiros, home around 9. There's a plate in the refrigerator if you're hungry. XOXO, Mom. She signs her text, too, as if Ethan doesn't know who the sender is. He's about to check out what's inside the refrigerator when he looks out the kitchen window and sees Rosalie Greeman. At least he thinks it's Ro Greeman, standing in her mother's living room. The Greeman house is directly behind the Harris house. The backyards run into each other. No fence, no hedge, no trees. No obstacles whatsoever, so Ethan can see clearly into Roe's mother's house. Roe and a man appear to be arguing. Their arms flail. The man's back is turned toward the window. Ethan can't see his face, but he can see Roe's and he feels her anger. Ethan used to know Roe well, back when they were teenage neighbors living in these houses, with dreams of leaving and never coming back. Roe and the man now stand 5 feet apart. They're pointing at each other, shouting at each other. Ethan, of course, can't hear a word, but he knows Roe's body language. At least he used to. He has no idea who the man is. The argument looks like it could escalate into something physical, something dangerous. Ethan is far from a tough guy. He's never been in a fist fight in his life. That's 40 years of never fighting, and it seems a little late to start now. His choices are to call 911 and hope the police get there in time to stop whatever might happen, or to go over there himself and knock on the door like the old neighbor he is, just to say hello and tell Roe that he's back in town for a week or two. And Ethan exits the kitchen and walks back through the living room that hasn't changed since he moved out of his house over 2 decades ago. He rarely visits Minneapolis anymore. The Harris family gathers once or twice a year, but usually at one of Ethan's siblings' homes, which is far larger than his parents' bungalow. Ethan's surprised to see the same Sears furniture, soft man-made fabrics and earth tones, same light-sucking drapes, same Judaica on the bookshelves, reminding him that he's returned to Minneapolis to visit his parents for the high holidays. That's the excuse he gave them anyway. The real reason is more complicated and desperate. There's a familiar Seder plate, menorah, and Shabbat candlesticks. Nothing has changed. For Ethan's entire youth, his parents lived like they were on the run, but when they settled down, they really settled down. He continues toward the front door and catches sight of himself in the entryway mirror. When Ethan was in high school, this is where he'd check his appearance before leaving the house to meet with friends. Back then, he had no gray hair, no lines on his forehead, no crinkles around his eyes. Now his dark curls are riddled with silver, and Ethan's olive skin complains about life. And he's missing one thing he had in high school, cocksureness. He was sure of himself when he was younger, a confidence blanketed in ignorance. But then life did what life does, and all that youthful bravado leaked out through the lines in his face like steam through fissures in geothermal rock. Perfect. No confidence, and he's about to knock on a neighbor's door to interrupt two fighting adults. Ethan Harris to the rescue. What a joke.
That's like a really accurate portrayal of, getting older and looking back at yourself and, you know, kind of half wistful and half like, ew, I was such an idiot. And, it's very interesting. Did anything like what inspired this book? What gave you the idea for going home and solving something that happened when he was a teenager?
Well, that's not the reason he goes home. He goes home because he does his best thinking there. And his show, The Murder Show, is on the bubble. There's been 3 seasons. Each season, the ratings are getting worse. In the backstory, he went into the network, pitched a 4th season. They said, "We don't like this. Come back with something better." And so he went home, kind of desperate, back to his personal home. But then the Writers Guild strike happens, the one that we just went through in the last year or so. And so he has a little time. That's why he goes back to Minneapolis. And he's 40 years old. And to normal people, that's not old. But in Hollywood, 40 is old. And he has his own show, and he's desperately afraid that if it doesn't come back, he's too old to get hired on someone else's show. No hotshot 30-year-old writer wants some old 40-year-old telling him what to do. So he has a career desperation. And when I wrote TV for 30 years, and I felt like I was either working myself to death, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, or I was desperately searching for my next job. There was very little happy medium in between. And I want to take that anxiety I felt over that, and I've given it to Ethan. And it's the other thing that inspired this book is it's 22 years after he graduated high school. I think we all look back on that time of our lives and we have a reality we've painted for ourselves, but often find out that that reality wasn't true. And that's also what this book is about.
Interesting. So you wrote 4 books with your private eye Nils. And then you went to standalones, often about family, although Nils makes a cameo in this book, right?
Yes.
So what attracts you to write the mystery story from the family unit point of view rather than, say, police or private eye or, people who are strangers?
I was told by my publisher to write a standalone. And family is what I gravitate toward naturally. So that's with Carolina Moonset and the standalones after that. I continue to write more domestic suspense. The most frequent email I get, the most frequent comment I get at book events is, when is Nils coming back? When is Nils coming back? So I didn't tell my publisher I was going to do it, but he's in a few chapters of this book, and it does set up his return. So Nils is coming back in December. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. It seems like families gets to be at the heart of every story once you start looking at it. I mean, the television series now that are so popular are all seem to be revolve around either an actual biological related family or people who become a family because they work together or something like that. So, but tell us about a Hollywood writer's room, because I bet it's a lot different than people think.
I bet you 5 or 6 times over my career, a reporter from the New York Times or NPR or someplace like that wanted to sit in the writer's room to see the excitement. And it's about the most boring thing you've ever witnessed in your life.
Really?
There are moments, but for every half hour of TV you see, there's probably 100 hours of people sitting around a table talking through the story, trying to find a better line, trying to find the right story beats. It's a group process, and hopefully someone is steering it well, or the hours get really long. But it's a completely different process from writing a novel. Although the skills I learned as a television writer, almost all of them apply to book writing: character, story, relationships, series architecture. No prose. There's no prose involved. And I'm just starting to realize this is my 8th novel. And I've written 4 since then because, there's that lag. But I'm just starting to realize I don't have to try to be so entertaining in the books as I felt I did in television. Like, I can just take the gas off a little bit. So TV's everything's a little heightened.
Yeah, because you only have a half hour or an hour or something.
Yeah, and it costs millions and millions of dollars to make every episode, so it better be entertaining.
Yeah, that's true. So does one or two people write the basic script and then everybody in the writer's room edits it, or do you literally sit down and write together the entire script from scratch?
Every show works a little bit differently, and there are some shows that they write them around the table from scratch, and I thank God I wasn't on a show like that because I would have gone crazy.
Yeah, it sounds agonizing.
I've had to do it in rewrites, but most shows work where a group talks out a story in detail. 1 or 2 writers take those notes and write an outline, and then the group goes over that in detail, and there's a group rewrite, and then the writer or writers take the new outline away and write a script, and then the group goes over it several times, both before and during production, and then it gets rewritten again in the editing room often. So it's a lot of rewriting.
So what's the difference between the editing room and the writer's room?
The writer's room, everything's happening on paper. The editing room, film has been shot.
Oh, you mean the actual film editing?
Yeah, so you're
Okay.
actually cutting. If it was directed properly, you often anticipate you might need to make cuts for time or a storyline that may not work as well as you think you do. So hopefully you can cut around. It looks perfectly normal when you're watching at home on television, but chunks are missing.
Oh, yeah.
Or
I can
scenes
imagine.
sometimes get reversed too. That also happens.
So for all of us authors who want to write for film or adapt our book
Mhm.
for film, how does a lowly writer get the attention of anybody at a studio? Tell us the
Well,
secret.
for a novelist or short story writer or essayist, having something published will often get you recognized. In Hollywood, they're always looking for source material. They're looking at books, they're looking at short stories or essays.
Right.
So that's because I have so many friends who are authors now, and they all ask that same question. And I'm like, there's really nothing more you can do than have something published. Um, the executives in the film and television industry like something that exists. It's a lot easier to understand what it is that way than listen to a pitch. And a pitch is
Right.
really a sales job that may or may not have anything to do with the script being good. But if there's an existing property, they have a better idea.
Okay, so how do I get my existing property in front of their eyes?
Well, you, you, if you have an agent, your
Yeah.
agent's job is to have Hollywood connections and people who can represent your book to film or television. That's really the best way. Because if you have a book that's successful, if it makes bestseller lists, if it
Hmm.
gets good reviews and notable publications, the people in Hollywood will probably see it without an agent letting them know. But often an agent will have a relationship or two with Hollywood people. Maybe it's an agent out there or
Hmm.
studio executives, and they can get the book seen.
Okay, well, I could talk about this all night, but we're already past an hour. So I'm going to go down our chat question. We did have a few questions in the chat for all of you or some of you. So I'm going to ask those right now to go back to all of you. Okay. A listener asked if the tribe that Donna talked about, if that is part of her heritage, which I guess we didn't make clear. And she says that is her background. But then there was a follow-up question about how much research did you do into the Indian tribes? Oh, Donna, do you want to just answer that real quick?
Yeah, I was really, really lucky that I was born in Oklahoma on the Kiowa Comanche Apache Reservation. We're not a reservation anymore because there's oil under our land. So there's got to be ways of getting it. But more so, I grew up with my grandfather, who is the tribe historian. In my novels, I call it a story keeper because our historian keeps all of our stories. I wonder if I can flash. You can see one of our winter count calendars in my background here. My
Mhm.
grandfather was the last reader of the calendar. And so I grew up with our history. We would have a gathering of the tribe, and my grandfather would start with a significant event that happened one winter or summer. And in the course of that evening, because storytelling was typically all evening, someone else would say, "Oh, I remember my grandmother telling me about that, and such happened in my band or my family." And then someone else would pick up that chain and tell another story. So when they talk about our oral traditions being a chain, it's literally is a chain from person to person, not just generation to generation. So I was real lucky to grow up with my grandfather, who was the historian. When I was 12 years old, he's rolling up one of his deerskin calendars, and it still makes me shiver. I remember this so vividly. I looked up at him because I was his shadow. I followed him everywhere, the poor man. And he says, you know, I'm not sure who's he go something. It started with I have to choose who's next to keep these stories, to preserve these stories, to make sure they go on to the future. And Indians don't point, or I should say Kiowas don't point. And with his chin, he pointed to me as he's holding his calendar, and he says, you are next to carry these forward. And from 12 on, I have felt that responsibility. So Grandpa not only taught me the history from our winter count calendars, but then he took the extra step of we went and we bought every book about the Kiowas that were out at the time. And in the evenings, he would scratch out what was wrong and put in what was right. I spent a decade recording our elders. I mean, from a 101-year-old who was born in our last Sundance to my youngest was an 80-year-old, and capturing their stories, their family stories, and keeping those videotaped. So my research became just life experience, and I'm trying to share those stories in a fun way now.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool.
Thank you.
A listener also asked, Adam, do you have dogs or cats, and which kind?
Oh, I do have a dog. I have a Chow Chow
Oh,
named Ziggy, and he's a good boy. Got him as a pandemic puppy, and yeah, he's part of the family.
yeah, we had a chow, and they can have different personalities. Some are fairly friendly, and ours was, there were two people that belonged in that on that property. That was my husband and me. And if you
Yeah,
weren't either my husband or me, you did not belong there.
yeah.
We took him off the property. If we walked around the street, he didn't care. Nobody, other people didn't bother him or anything. But it's like if it was his property, these were the rules, except the pizza delivery guy. He liked him a lot.
Oh, you got a pass. All right.
Yeah. He got a pass. So yeah, I know what you mean about chows. They're interesting. And another one asked, Heather, do you live on the east or west coast of Florida?
I live in Miami. I've been very lucky. I've got to travel all over the place, but I've never lived anywhere but Miami, except for having gone to University of South Florida in Tampa. So the east.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and several people said to Matt, happy pub day.
Thank you.
Very excited about your new
Yeah.
book. Unfortunately, as I say, we are out of time, which is unhappy, but do join us next month on May 12th. We're going to have guest authors, Brendan Slocum, Tori Eldridge, Lee Hollis, and Michelle Gagnon. And the winners of our authors' books tonight, I wrote up your emails, but not, of course, I didn't want to publicize your email on a site. So it's like I left out certain letters. So if this looks like your email, then you need to email us at the bottom and let me know what your address is, and I will mail you these or I will let the authors know who they can mail their free book to. And thank everyone for being here tonight. This was really fun and entertaining, and I loved talking with all of you, and it was so interesting. And see you next month on Rogue Reads, and thanks again to our fabulous authors.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.